afternoon. I'm Victoria Marshall with the latest news from the Washington Watch news desk. 400 migrants affiliated with ISIS have crossed the southern border in the last 3 years, according to the Department of Homeland Security. While more than 150 of these illegal aliens have been arrested, the whereabouts of about 50 others remains unknown. U.S. officials say people affiliated with ISIS are operating as human smugglers in Central Asia and helping people across the U.S. border. It is not clear whether the human smuggling directly funds ISIS activity. Here's what Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas had to say about it yesterday.
With respect to the people from Central Asia, we have no evidence that they are individuals plotting to harm the United States. That is inaccurate. It's very important to note that the safety and security of the American people are our highest priority. We screen and vet individuals at the time of encounter. If we learn of derogatory information, we take enforcement action. We are proceeding with extreme caution here in the service of the security and safety of the American people.
Mayorkas' comments come after the Special Operations Association of America, a group that represents U.S. Special Forces, warned in a letter this week that the U.S. faces an ultra-high threat of getting hit by a major Islamic terrorist attack due to President Joe Biden's open border policies. And in other border news, Democratic Governor Maura Healey of Massachusetts is sending state officials to the border to tell migrants not to come to Massachusetts. Deep Blue Massachusetts officials have reportedly gone to Brownsville, Hidalgo, McAllen, and San Antonio, all border towns in Texas, to tell illegal immigrants in shelters that Massachusetts is full and has no more room in its own shelters. Per Massachusetts Emergency Assistance Director General Scott Rice, it is essential that we get the word out that our shelters are full so that families can plan accordingly to make sure they have a safe place to go. Massachusetts is not the first state to do this. Colorado has also sent state officials to warn migrants not to come to the state, telling them there is no more room. And in other domestic news, former President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden will take the debate stage tonight in the country's first presidential debate of the 2024 election. The debate will occur at 9 p.m. Eastern in Atlanta and will be hosted by CNN and moderated by anchors Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. This will be the first time Trump and Biden have debated since the 2020 election. Trump is currently leading in the polls. In a head-to-head matchup, Real Clear polling shows Trump up 1.5%. A New York Times Siena College poll, on the other hand, shows Trump with a 3-point lead. Trump currently leads in the battleground states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. President Biden won those states in the 2020 presidential election. And finally, a top Biden administration health official pressured medical experts into nixing age limit guidelines for transgender surgeries for minors. According to an exclusive report by the New York Times, Admiral Rachel Levine, a man who identifies as a woman and who serves as the Assistant Secretary for Health at the Department of Health and Human Services, asked the World Professional Association for Transgender Health to remove age minimums for its guidelines on treating minors with gender dysphoria. According to the report, Levin feared that the age limit guidelines would fuel growing opposition to such surgeries. The group recommended age minimums of 14 for hormone treatment, 15 for mastectomies, 16 for breast augmentation, and 17 for genital surgeries. But it removed these minimums after pressure from Levine. And those are today's headlines. I'm Victoria Marshall. For more news and commentary, be sure to check out the Washington Stand at washingtonstand.com and follow us on social media for updates at FRCDC. Up next is Washington Watch with Tony Perkins. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and commentary.
From the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Washington Watch with Tony Perkins starts now.
For decades, the CCP has waged an aggressive campaign of political warfare, a strategy to weaken our nation without ever firing a shot. The end goal is clear: to weaken and defeat America.
That was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, in a hearing yesterday on the Chinese Communist Party's political warfare directed at the United States. Welcome to this Thursday edition of Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. Texas Congressman Michael Cloud, a member of the House Oversight Committee, joins us to discuss how the Chinese Communist Party is successfully waging a war against America by targeting, influencing, and infiltrating federal agencies. That's coming up later. Another decision by the Supreme Court. Earlier today, the U.S. Supreme Court sidestepped a decision on the fate of Idaho's pro-life law, making it clear that protecting the life of the unborn will not be left to the states. We'll explore what the court decided and why with ADF Senior Counsel John Birch.
That reporting is incorrect. We do not have identified 400 people with potential ISIS ties.
Calling that initial NBC report inaccurate over the 400 potential ISIS ties?
I think it is inaccurate.
That was Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Oklahoma Congressman Josh Perkins joins me to talk about the presidential debate, border, and the GOP platform. I don't want to miss that conversation. And what would you do if they showed up at your door?
So I'm sure you're aware of some of the things that have been going on at your work lately.
With regards to?
Yeah, so can we sit down for a minute? Let me do my song and dance.
That was the ring camera footage of two FBI agents showing up at the home of Vanessa Savage, a nurse who blew the whistle on illegal transgender procedures conducted on minors at Texas Children's Hospital. Vanessa will join me in studio to tell her story. Well, biblical truth, as you know, is under attack in our culture and in our country, and you and I must defend the Christian faith. And you can help by taking advantage of FRC's $2.5 million challenge match and have twice the impact if you give before June the 30th. To join us in defending the faith, simply text the word DEFEND to 67742. That's 67742, the word DEFEND. And we also have team members who are also defending the faith standing by to take your call. And you can call them 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008 to stand with us as we defend the faith. The Biden administration is claiming that the number of unlawful crossings at the southern border has dropped by more than 40% since the president issued his executive order 3 weeks ago, suggesting that it addresses the border crisis. Also, Secretary Mayorkas is refuting an NBC report about ISIS smuggling illegals into the United States. Joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Josh Perkins. He serves on the House Homeland Security Committee and the Budget Committee. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Oklahoma. Congressman Perkins, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony. Honored to be with you.
First of all, Josh, I want to congratulate you on being recognized this morning with FRC Action's annual award for members of Congress who scored 100%, a perfect score for votes cast on our scorecard in 2023. So congratulations for standing firm for the family.
Thank you, sir.
I want to ask you about this. Cochise County Sheriff Mark Daniels in Arizona is among those on the border who are questioning the Biden administration's report. He says they're not seeing a difference down there, and it's frustrating to hear this administration celebrate when they're still seeing tragedies every day on the border. What do you know about that?
Well, I think that San Diego, as soon as this executive order came out, that sector was talking about they were given direct orders. These are CBP officials to disregard deportation for 100 of 195 different countries. And so, I mean, even if you try to allow their wordsmithing on this to be put into place quantitatively, if it's down 40% from the 7,000 crossing per day, you are in the 4,000 to 5,000 range. Think about this. Under Obama, his Secretary of Homeland Security said more than 1,000 a day overwhelms the system. So it's celebrating the astronomical numbers that have become normalized under this administration's egregious policies.
It's a really good point to make. I mean, this thing has mushroomed, and simply because they trim it, they clip it at the margins, it's something to celebrate. I want to go to something else that is, I think, it's a part of this mix because we really don't know who's coming across the border. NBC News reported this week that DHS has identified over 400 immigrants from Central Asia and elsewhere who crossed into the United States in the past 3 years as quote-unquote subjects of concern because they were brought by an ISIS-affiliated human smuggling network. Now, Mayorkas yesterday said he thinks the report is inaccurate. Is that more spin, or is it? What is it? What's happening? Tell us.
Tony, it's amazing to me. The Department of Homeland Security identifies this, and their own secretary is undermining their own report. That's the first thing to point out. The second thing to point out is, of course, they want to hide this, right? I mean, does everybody think that the reason why that they have made this executive order that is really smoke and mirrors, you got officials describing this, FAIR's describing this smoke and mirrors, their own CBP president of Customs and Border Patrol, the union types are saying it's smoke and mirrors. Nobody's fooled. Everybody knows this is about trying to help Joe Biden for electoral prospects. And yet, I mean, how can you get around the news popping up daily of a 12-year-old raped, 15-year-old raped, murders, a baby that was shot in Maryland? All this happening by illegal aliens. Two of those incidents I just named were two illegal aliens raping little girls. This is astounding. It's egregious. It's heartbreaking. You can't put enough lipstick on this hog. They have made this country unsafe because of these egregious policies designed to make sure that they can maintain power because they want the census changed and they want people to vote. And it's the same administration that's using every entitlement program. Maybe I'm embellishing a little bit, but entitlement programs, we'll say, generally, we're learning about in Congress. They're sending out voter registration information through these entitlement programs because they want these people who receive government support to turn out and vote. They're worried about the election, and it's just astounding how personal ambition is triumphing regarding our own national security because they want to stay in power.
You know, Josh, I'd step back for just a moment in history, and our founders warned about those who could vote themselves a raise out of the public treasury, which is exactly what we see happening with these entitlement programs.
That's it. I mean, it's free candy politics. People have learned it. And look, sadly, it reaches across party lines. It's why it's so important. And I hope we get to transition to that conversation about party platform. But it's why it's so important, Tony, that Republicans, what attracted me to a party of godly principles and fiscal responsibility is we run the opposite. We are a republic, not a democracy that's built upon populism. We as a republic respond to the great tragedy that awaits us of spending ourselves into oblivion, devaluation of our currency, and we do what's right to make sure the blessing of liberty endures for our posterity versus give away more free candy dole-outs without any regard for the future. As it's been said by Jim DeMint, and I'd like to quote him often, we're not that. We're not the party of free candy giveaways. We are saying it's time to buy vegetables or we're not going to have a country left.
Well, let's go to that party platform because I think what voters need to see is a contrast between the two parties, but that's not always the case. Now, in the party platform, it's an opportunity for the parties to state their priorities, their policy priorities, and their principles. But oftentimes what we're seeing are two parties, one in the HOV lane speeding down the road, the other just over in the slow lane. There needs to be going the opposite direction. How important is it that the Republican Party clearly articulate those principles coming up in Wisconsin in just 2 weeks?
Look, I think it's extremely important. I've got some, concerns about anyone that would go into the Republican Party platform and try to remove any of our biblical virtue elements. As a social conservative, that attracted me 20 years ago when I went to work for Tom Coburn. One of the things Tom Coburn had me do when I was working to help him, among many others, run for the United States Senate, I lived in an area of Oklahoma that was full-on Democrat-controlled. but it was an evangelical part of Oklahoma. And he gave us instruction. He said, I want you to take the party platform, and I want you to go out and I want you to educate the voters. That is a big part of why Southeast Oklahoma, where I grew up, Little Dixie, Oklahoma, began to change, because people who believed in biblical virtue, once they saw the contrast, Tony, they said, I can't be a part of this. My 94-year-old grandfather, World War II vet, had a gold tooth because of a bayonet that was shoved in his mouth. I'd love to tell you a better story than this. It was in a bar fight with some French soldiers, but he was in part of the invasion into Italy. In my 92, 94, I can't remember what year this happened in his life. He had been a Democrat his whole life. Tom Coburn was the first Republican he ever voted for. He left the Democrat Party just before he passed away, to his great credit, because they removed God in support of Israel from the Democrat Party platform. He called me and said, that's it. I've had enough. It matters what's in that platform. And look, Ronald Reagan gave us a great warning in the late 70s. And I think it was around this conversation. And he said, we need to have a banner raised. We all know this, but the context matters. He was being asked, should we not water down what we stand for? And Reagan's comment, his great personal reflection was, we need to raise a banner that stands for certain values which cannot be moved. He said certain values because he was talking about those social issues. That was in Reagan, his great shining city on a hill speech. It's Reagan who said in this very context of this conversation was bold colors, not pale pastels.
It appears that may be where some want to take the Republican Party, especially on those issues, Congressman Perkins, you were talking about when it comes to the sanctity of human life, the definition of marriage and human sexuality.
Yeah, I've had a conversation with one of my friends who I started with in the Oklahoma State Senate, Mark Allen. He's a part of the platform committee. He's a man of conviction. I've shared with him as of today my concerns that anybody that go into our platform and try to take away our bold color flag waving, they need to be held to account, because it will hurt those who want to turn out and vote. It will hurt the very people that we say we want to support, the type of people we want to see in office. It's not watering down the message.
Could not agree with you more. Congressman Josh Perkins, always great to see you. And again, thank you for standing firm for faith, family, and freedom.
Thank you, Tony. God bless you. Thanks for having us back on.
Absolutely, anytime. Congressman Josh Perkins of Oklahoma's 2nd Congressional District. You heard right there the importance, an illustration of how the Republican Party platform, Democratic Party platform, they contrast one another, and that contrast has increased significantly. Well, here's an opportunity to make sure that the Republican Party platform stays firm on these foundational issues. As I've been talking about, and I'm going to continue to talk about, I'm going to be on the platform committee. I'm going to be in Wisconsin starting on July the 7th. And I need your help, because there are some who have been put onto the platform committee of 112 people, some that want to change that party platform. I need you to weigh in, and I'll tell you how. Text the word LIFE to 67742. That's the word LIFE to 67742. Let's stand firm for faith, family, and freedom. All right, don't go away. When we come back, we're going to take a look at today's Supreme Court decision regarding Idaho's pro-life law. So don't go anywhere. We're right back after this.
Download the new Stand Firm app for Apple and Android phones today and join a wonderful community of fellow believers. We've created a special place for you to access news from a biblical perspective, read and listen to daily devotionals, pray for current events, and more. Share the Stand Firm app with your friends, family, and church members, and stand firm everywhere you go.
Hello, I'm Jody Heiss, president of FRC Action. Here in America, we thank God for the right to vote, and we can all agree on the importance of this upcoming election. Many of us want to support candidates who share our values, but we're not comfortable supporting the big national political organizations. Well, we have a solution for supporting candidates through FRC Action's Faith, Family, and Freedom Fund. Being a super PAC, it allows for unlimited individual and corporate donations, so we can endorse and fund campaigns for people who share our values. By giving to this fund, we're able to pull all of our contributions together and support and endorse like-minded candidates. That's how we move the needle. So let's be the best stewards possible and get the most out of our political contributions by uniting our efforts. For more information or to contribute, visit faithfamilyfreedomfund.org. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Again, to help us make sure that the party platform stays firm on these issues, text LIFE to 67742. And one way to keep up with what's going on is to download the Stand Firm app. You can find it at the App Store. You can not only watch Washington Watch, get the Washington Stand, and our daily devotional, Stand on the Word. Earlier today, the U.S. Supreme Court released its decision in a highly anticipated case where Idaho's law protecting unborn children was at question. Now, the court announced that it had declined to rule on the merits of the case, but instead sent the case back to the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit for further consideration. So the question is the Supreme Court sidestepping the issue? What does this mean for unborn babies in the state of Idaho? Well, here to unpack this is John Birch. He's the Alliance Defending Freedom's Vice President of Appellate Advocacy and the Senior Counsel at ADF. ADF was instrumental in assisting Idaho Attorney General Raul Labrador in this case. John, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for taking time to join us today.
Here.
So what exactly does the Idaho law say? First, let's start there.
The Idaho law protects life beginning at conception with an exception to save the life of the mother. That's always been clear. Everybody's understood what that's meant, and after Dobbs, it was supposed to go fully into effect. The federal government, in response to Dobbs, has taken a federal law, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, known as EMTALA, and that's simply a law that requires hospitals that receive Medicaid to treat indigent patients who critically need care when they show up at the emergency room. And the administration took that and turned it into an abortion mandate. And then they sued the state of Idaho to try to guarantee that emergency rooms could be abortion enclaves, even in a pro-life state like Idaho. And so that's the case that came to the Supreme Court.
And the Biden administration argued that the Constitution's supremacy clause gave this federal provision the ability to trump what the state had done in this pro-life law, correct?
Exactly. That was their position, but there were a couple of problems with that. The supremacy clause only kicks in if there is a conflict between federal law and state law. And here there was no conflict because federal law and state law are both aiming to preserve life, not take it. In fact, there's nothing in the federal statute, EMTALA, that even says a word about abortion. To the contrary, it treats the unborn child as an additional patient that emergency room doctors have to care for. So Idaho's position all along has been no conflict, no supremacy clause.
And so that actually came out in the oral arguments, the Biden administration admitting some things that showed that this was not in conflict. Therefore, the court threw this back to the Ninth Circuit. Why didn't the court just deal with the merits of the case?
Well, that's a good question, and we'll never know for sure. But the way that the controlling opinion, 3-justice concurrence written by Justice Barrett, joined by Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh, the way they explained it is that the case had morphed because of the federal government's admissions. And after the Biden administration admitted that abortions were not required in numerous circumstances, that essentially Idaho's law remains almost entirely intact. And they said that the injunction the lower courts had ordered would not stop Idaho from enforcing its law in the vast majority of circumstances. So what went from a really broad dispute about abortion enclaves and emergency rooms became a very narrow one, and those justices thought this needed some further deliberation by the Ninth Circuit before they made a final decision. And so we'll take those concessions. They're absolutely terrific for protecting life, not only in Idaho, but in pro-life states around the country. And we'll keep litigating back in the Ninth Circuit, and if we have to come back to the Supreme Court, we'll do that.
It would suggest, by one of the comments from one of the more liberal justices, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, that she said this: while the court dawdles and the country waits, pregnant people experiencing emergency medical conditions remain in a precarious position. And she lamented that this was not the end of it. So she's suggesting, by the way, I think that's interesting, pregnant people. I think only women get pregnant, but that's another topic. So it would suggest that she sees that the federal government is on very thin ice in terms of trying to stop this law.
I think that's right. And Justice Alito wrote a dissent joined by Justice Thomas and Justice Gorsuch that really laid out Idaho's position and explained why Idaho was correct and that the Supreme Court could rule in favor of them right now just based on the simple statutory text. And the majority of the justices didn't think that was appropriate. They wanted to give this a little bit more process. But that does signal where the court is likely headed if this has to come back a second time, either because this case goes down to the Ninth Circuit and comes back up again, or because a very similar case out of the Fifth Circuit, which ruled against the Biden administration and in favor of Texas and some pro-life doctors that ADF represents, that there too, that the EMTALA rule was an invalid interpretation of the Federal Medicaid Act.
Well, when you look at the application of this EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, this shows that there's clearly those that want to, on the left, make abortion a federal issue. So this, I think, undermines the idea that a state can be pro-life and not be molested by the federal government. There is still federal intervention when it comes to the issue of life.
Absolutely. After the U.S. Supreme Court in Dobbs said definitively that now the people in every state would get to decide what their pro-life policies would be, then the Biden administration walks in, takes a statute that had nothing to do with abortion, that requires protection of the unborn child, and turns it into a federal abortion mandate. And so, unfortunately, that's one of many actions this administration has taken to basically force on states abortion rights that don't exist anywhere in the federal code. And until they get reined in and learn their lesson, I think they're going to keep doing it. And that's really a harm to democracy. It's a harm to the rule of law, and it's a harm to unborn children.
John, thanks so much for taking time to join us. Appreciate, once again, the great work that Alliance Defending Freedom does.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And folks, just a reminder that we must be eternally vigilant. I mean, we must be ever vigilant as we remain here on this earth to defend these foundational principles, and one of them being the right to life. And the idea that this is simply going to be left to the states and the federal government's not going to be involved in it is just, it's laughable. The left wants to impose abortion on demand up until the moment of birth at taxpayers' expense. Now, they're claiming that Republicans want to ban all abortions all across the nation. I haven't seen that legislation, but I have seen their legislation to eradicate all pro-life laws. Help us stand for life in the Republican Party platform. Text LIFE to 67742. Don't go away. We're coming back with more Washington Watch after this.
Everything we do begins as an idea. Before there can be acts of courage, there must be the belief that some things are worth sacrificing for. Before there can be marriage, there's the idea that man should not be alone. Before there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They're disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us on this Thursday. As I mentioned at the top of the program, I don't think I need to remind you, but biblical truth in America is under attack, and it's up to you and I to defend that Christian faith that this country is built upon. And right now, you can help us as we come to the end of our fiscal year, June the 30th. We have some very generous friends of the Family Research Council that have put forth a $2.5 million challenge match. So every dollar you give will be doubled between now and June the 30th. So to join us in defending the faith, text the word DEFEND to 67742, or you can call one of our defenders of the faith that's standing by to take your call, 800-225-4008. That's 800-225-4008. In testimony before the House Oversight Committee, expert witnesses confirmed the Chinese Communist Party is successfully waging a war against America by targeting, influencing, and infiltrating federal agencies and key industries. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Michael Cloud. He is a member of the House Oversight Accountability Committee and the Appropriations Committee. He represents the 27th Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Cloud, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you. It's great to be on with you.
Michael, let me first start by congratulating you on being recognized this morning as 100% on the faith, family, and freedom issues with FRC Action and our annual award.
Well, thank you, and thanks for all the good work you do to hold us accountable. That's part of the job of we the people, and y'all do a great job of that. So thanks for your hard work as well.
Well, it's a team effort. Let's talk about the hearing. Let's talk about what's going on when we're looking at the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating and influencing American government. What do we know?
Well, what we know and what we have to recognize is that they're in an unrestricted warfare with everything but collateral against the United States. And I loved what Mary Kissel, who served in the Trump State Department, had said. She said, we keep talking of them as competitors. We need to recognize that they're an enemy, and they do not have the best intentions for our nation in mind. And them replacing us as the preeminent force on the world stage would certainly not be good for humanity as well. And so we have to stand up strong. We have to recognize the situation that we're in, and we have to be willing to make the tough decisions to push back on this communist agenda that they're trying to foist upon the whole world.
So Congressman Cloud, I think a question that many of our viewers and listeners would have with the abundance of evidence that's out there. It's not just something came out this year. This is something we've been seeing now for increasing over the last decade in particular. And it's well documented. You're getting information, but it's out there in the public as well. Why are we still treating them as a fair competitor when in fact they are an enemy?
You know, it's hard from where I sit to understand why. When you look at what's happening at how they're using our border situation to get the fentanyl into our country, to put a weight on the systems that are meant to provide aid to the most neediest in our country, what they're doing to send military age single adults into our country, helping fund the international agencies that are doing that, to what's happening to control the minds of our young people from TikTok all the way up to the universities, you know, and then the way they've infiltrated versus virtually every single institution, every industry, and what they're doing to steal our intellectual property. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. We should be standing strong to them. When I look at what's happening, it seems like the communists, the CCP, they have a plan to win, and our State Department, our DOD seems to have a plan not to offend anyone. And this is where we've really got to step up and recognize the situation for what it is, because it's really, America being leading on the world stage is really what's best for humanity.
So, Congressman Cloud, is it because our government is preoccupied with this nonsense like DEI policies and practices within federal agencies? Are they distracted from the real threats?
You know, to that point, one of the very first eye-opening conversations I had as a brand new member was with an ambassador from another country. And, you know, they came in and said, hey, it's a pleasure to meet you. You know, thank you for the aid your country sends our country. And then after some time of talking, he said, can I take my ambassador hat off for a moment? I said, sure, I'd love to. And speak frankly, he said, every dollar you send our country goes against Christian values and family values. And frankly, our country would be better off if we didn't receive any. And I've heard that same situation from a number of countries where they say, we appreciate what America has stood for, and we don't want to align ourselves with China, but China, they're working to give us ports, bridges, and roads. We know that's a debt trap, but from our State Department, they get a lecture, and it's things that undermine the society and values that they hold dear. And that's not what they want to be involved with. And so it puts them in a difficult situation. And the things that we're working on is to get our State Department. This is not advancing any sort of strategic interest of the United States at all. It's frankly a false religion that they've decided to try to foist on the world. And we've got to make sure that we stop their efforts to do so.
30 seconds, Congressman Cloud. How do the voters weigh in? What can we do to help you and others that are fighting this nonsense?
Well, certainly stay connected with your representatives. We all need to make sure that we're doing that, but also to be vigilant in our communities. You know, if you own a business and this is being foisted upon you, stand up. Don't be afraid to speak. Courage is contagious.
That's right. You're absolutely correct. Congressman Michael Cloud, great to see you. And once again, congratulations for being 100%.
I appreciate it. God bless y'all.
All right. After the break, I'll be joined by a nurse from Texas Children's Hospital who became the latest to blow the whistle on what doctors are doing illegally when it comes to transgendering kids. An explosive interview. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. We're back after this.
Join us October 3rd through the 6th as we gather with spiritually active, governance-engaged conservatives from across America at the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit in Washington, D.C. We'll pray for our nation, engage in government and culture, and stand for biblical truth alongside Christian leaders, worldview experts, and government officials. We'll discuss important issues like the sanctity of life, religious freedom, protecting students, strengthening families, praying for our nation, and how you can impact America's future from a biblical worldview. Our nation stands at a critical juncture, and we must ensure that the issues impacting faith, family, and freedom are understood and advanced. Register by July 8th and receive a $70 discount off admission. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org. That's PrayVoteStand.org.
Jesus said in John 15, "These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." In 2024, in these divided and uncertain times, how can this be possible? By abiding in Him through His Word. At Family Research Council, we want to help you do that, which is the reason for the Stand on the Word Bible reading plan. In just 10 to 15 minutes each day, you will have read the entire Bible in just 2 years. But more importantly, you will be abiding in Him daily. Find our Bible reading plan at frc.org/Bible. And join Tony Perkins each weekday for a 10-minute devotional inspired by the daily reading and designed to encourage you on this journey through the Bible. Listen on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. And remember, the grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever.
Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these sage cons yourself, join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to have you with us. Again, I want to encourage you to stand with us as we defend life, family, and religious freedom at the Republican Party platform committee that is going to be meeting at the convention just coming up. So many of you have already responded, but I would encourage you to stand with us, help us, and to find out how, text LIFE to 67742. That's LIFE to 67742, and you'll get a link. You can sign up and be a part of our response to make sure that the Republican Party platform stays firm on those issues. Well, our word for today comes from 1 Chronicles chapter 28. Now, therefore, in the sight of all Israel, the assembly of the Lord, and in the hearing of our God, be careful to seek out all the commandments of the Lord your God, that you may possess this good land and leave it as an inheritance to your children after you forever. That was David before he departed, leaving instruction for the people. Then he turns to his son Solomon, and he says this, "And as for you, my son Solomon, know the God of your father and serve him with a loyal heart and with a willing mind. For the Lord searches all hearts and understands all the intents of the thoughts. If you seek him, he will be found by you. But if you forsake him, he will cast you off forever." He says, know the God of your father, meaning have a personal relationship with God. Serve the Lord. Your relationship with God should produce actions for God. And then look at the promise. If you seek him, you'll find him. What a promise. I invite you to join us in our journey through the Bible. Text Bible to 67742 to find out how. Previously, here on Washington Watch, I've discussed the Department of Justice targeting Dr. Ethan Heim, the whistleblower who exposed Texas Children's Hospital for secretly conducting transgender surgeries and treatments on minors. But Dr. Heim was not the only target of the FBI. In the Biden administration, FBI agents also threatened Vanessa Sivage, a nurse at Texas Children's Hospital who had knowledge of alleged Medicaid fraud related to gender procedures for minors at the Children's Hospital. Well, here at Family Research Council, this is not just another news story. Prior to serving as a nurse at the Texas Children's Hospital, she served as an intern at the Family Research Council, and she joins me now in studio to share her story. Vanessa, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with this. Tell me about what you were seeing at Texas Children's Hospital, and how you came forward anonymously in May of 2023 to respond to what you were seeing.
Yes, I accepted a position in a pediatric multi-specialty clinic, and this was the clinic that Dr. Roberts was seeing transgender patients in. And I quickly, saw that the number of transgender patients was increasing. And over time, I was being asked to do things that were against my beliefs and against my faith. On one occasion, Dr. Roberts asked me to teach a healthy teenage boy how to administer estrogen injections to himself. And at the time, I didn't realize what I was teaching him to do, but after thinking about it later, it dawned on me that he was going to go home and give himself, estrogen. And that was really devastating to me. That went against everything I believed about God's design for our gender and our sexuality. And so I almost quit on a number of occasions until I read Christopher Rufo's article with an anonymous whistleblower who we now know is Dr. Eitan Haim. And I read that, and I knew that everything that Christopher Rufo had reported on was true because I was seeing it in my clinic. And I came forward to affirm the testimony of that whistleblower. And a few days later, a second article that I worked with Christopher Rufo on a second article where I was an anonymous whistleblower as well.
So what was being said within the hospital? I mean, that was just kind of just hush-hush, or were they just hoping no one would pay any attention to what was going on?
Well, that's an interesting question. Unfortunately, the hospital has a track record of lying to the public, and this was no exception. They were, keeping secret a transgender medicine program from the public, from lawmakers in Texas, and they just thought that no one would bring it to light and come forward to expose that.
So let's talk about what happened after you came forward anonymously, vouched for the previous whistleblower that this in fact was happening. What occurred then?
Yes, it's interesting. I do want to just point out one thing, that in August of 2022, before I came forward anonymously in May of 2023, I wrote a piece for the Washington Stand called What Happened to Do No Harm, a nurse's firsthand view of the transgender craze. And I wrote that piece, and I'm so proud of what I wrote. And at the time, I really pondered whether or not to use my name with that piece. And I decided at the end to do that and to not be anonymous behind that. And I knew that would carry some risk. And so in July of 2023 of last year, I went about my work as normal. I just thought everything was perfectly fine until July 24th, when I received a knock on my front door, and two federal agents asked to speak with me about issues at my work. And at the time, we were hosting friends for dinner. We were in a totally different headspace. I go to the front door and I hear them saying my name and pulling out their badges, very clearly from the FBI. And it was terrifying.
So what did they say when they knocked at your door and you opened it up?
They said they were there because they knew what I believed. They knew about my views against transgender medicine. And that's why they were there. And they also came and they said that I was a person of interest in an investigation for an individual who had released confidential patient information to the public. And of course, they were referencing Dr. Haim, but I had no idea who he was.
So you had no interaction with him. You were just validating what he had said as a whistleblower, that you've seen the same thing.
Correct.
So two independent confirmations that this was taking place.
Yes. And they proceeded to inform me that they said, you know, I responded at one point and I said, you must be referring to the whistleblower who just, this article had just come out with this journalist. You must be referring to that. And they aggressively corrected me immediately, and they said, no, that's a leaker, and he's leaked classified patient information to the public. And we would like your help to expose him and to expose his identity. And I knew that, first of all, they were lying, because in that article with Christopher Rufo, all patient information had been redacted and blacked out, so that was a lie. Mm-hmm. And then they proceeded to just say that if I didn't help them, that they couldn't protect me. They threatened me and said I wasn't safe at my job. Essentially...
Now, these are 2 FBI agents.
Yes. They said someone at my job, at my work, had given them my name and that I wasn't safe.
What did they mean by that?
Well, they left it very vague, I think, on purpose. It was intentionally vague, very veiled threats.
Now, at this point, did you know that Dr. Heim was the whistleblower?
No.
So you still didn't know this, and they were wanting you to come up with information you had no idea about?
Correct.
And they were essentially threatening you?
They said that because they knew what I believed.
And what did they mean by that?
I think I don't really know, but I think they meant that because I'm aligned with the whistleblower's testimony and that I corroborated that, that they could intimidate me into helping them.
Okay, so that took place in July?
Of last year.
Of last year.
Mm-hmm.
What has transpired since then?
I went back to work. Of course, just, at first just terrified out of my mind, even though I'd done nothing wrong. And I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong, and I didn't regret anything I had done. But I started to notice some discrepancies in the paperwork and some red flags. And I noticed 2 things. First, that Texas Children's is illegally using Medicaid to cover transgender surgeries and hormones and treatments. And under the Texas Medicaid policy, which is available online, that is not covered. It's illegal. And I would see a healthy, teenage boy on estrogen, and lo and behold, the, insurance on file is Medicaid. And then the second example is the misdiagnosing of patients for the purpose of justifying puberty blockers. So the providers would intentionally diagnose a healthy teenage boy, let's say, with estrogen deficiency, and that would then justify the prescription of the estrogen for a teenage boy.
So this would facilitate them getting it where private insurance wouldn't pay for it. They couldn't pay for it themselves. The government would be paying for this.
Yes.
And that is in contravention of the law.
It is.
So what came of that? Is that still happening?
I can't say what's happened after that, but that's just what I witnessed and what I saw personally at my workplace, and so I just decided to come forward to expose that.
So bring us up to date where things have happened since you brought that information to light. What has happened to you? Any more interaction with federal authorities? What's taken place there?
Not yet, but I would not be surprised if I did get another visit from them. Unfortunately, we've seen more and more examples of people of faith that experience the overreach of the federal government just for acting in accordance with what they believe.
So, Vanessa, let me ask you this. Have you had other nurses or others that you've worked with contacted you, privately to talk with you about this or share their concerns?
Not yet.
I have to say, very courageous of you to step forward and expose what is a very destructive and and I've said this on the program before, I think it's a demonic agenda targeting our children to destroy their lives and their families. And we have to stand and speak against that. And it comes at a price. But that price is worth paying because it's the right thing to do. There are other professionals that find themselves in the same position as you have, and I'm sure you're pursuing your life's dream of helping people in the field of medicine. What would you say to others that are out there that are witnessing the same thing but intimidated because of what you just described, and that's the intent, is to force Christians either out of the arena or to be silent? What would you say to them?
Well, first and foremost, my faith is what compels me to speak out, and it's the cornerstone for everything that I've done. But to other nurses who are seeing illegal things, or medical professionals seeing illegal things happening in their workplace, I hope I can inspire and maybe empower nurses to come forward and not be afraid of the repercussions or the consequences, because children's lives are at stake here.
Vanessa, again, I thank you for your courage in coming in today. But one final question for you before our time runs out. Tell us and our listeners and viewers about your time here at the Family Research Council as an intern, and how that may have prepared you for what you're facing today.
I have to thank you, because I feel that FRC has personally invested in my life, and it is an experience that will mark me forever. Just the opportunity to be here and to meet so many amazing people and to learn with some of the most amazing people. And I really feel like FRC gave me a spiritual backbone and prepared me to stand up regardless of what comes. So I'm grateful to you.
Well, we're proud of you and grateful for your stand. Vanessa, how can people stand with you? How can they help you?
Would so appreciate support. I have a Give, Send, Go online and live right now, and that's to support me and any future, anything that may come down the pipeline.
Right.
And also just supporting other whistleblowers that are coming forward now as well.
What is that
It's
site?
Give, Send, Go, and then I think it's a nurse whistleblower.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, Vanessa, we're also going to encourage folks to pray for you as well.
Thank you.
And for the ability to continue to stand and to be an example for others.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Vanessa, great to see you.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you're challenged to stand firm for the faith, to be bold, to be courageous, to know and do what is right. We're out of time, but I would encourage you to pray for Vanessa and visit her site, and you can go to the website, tonyperkins.com, and find out more. Until next time, I leave you once again with the encouraging words of the Apostle Paul, where he says, when you've done everything you can do, when you've prayed, when you've prepared, and when you have taken your stand, by all means, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit tonyperkins.com.